Hey there, and welcome to another episode of 411 Pop Culture, where real people talk about really everything. I'm Justin, and tonight we're going to be talking about a sort of Halloween update regarding the franchise. Not necessarily, sorry if anybody clicked on this. I guess I want to get this out of the way right away, and there will be spoilers in this video, but this isn't like a Halloween movie specific update. If you saw the thumbnail, it's really about an event that kind of happened and an update regarding that event, regarding Jamie Lee Curtis, Danielle Harris, and Scout Taylor-Compton of the Halloween franchise. And so I just want to make sure you know like what you're getting into with this video. But a little bit of an update. So I just want to start off by saying like I said, spoilers. There'll probably be some spoilers stuff here in my explanation of things. But what I've always said, and I write for Wicked Horror, I've written this in articles, I've said it on some of my reviews for this. I consider, Jamie Lee Curtis to be the queen of the Halloween franchise, and I consider Danielle Harris to be the princess. And, I'm not, Scout Taylor-Compton is the lady in waiting, like they all have these very significant contributions, I believe, to the series. And it was a little disheartening to learn that like at Halloween Ends 2022 premiere that there was not an incident, but Danielle Harris and Scout Taylor-Compton reached out to finally get to meet Jamie Lee Curtis, and it did not go that well, which I'll play a little clip of that here in a second. But I just want to say, the Halloween movies mean a lot to me. I had two older brothers growing up, so they were always either watching like Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street. Halloween, for whatever reason, never really came into the picture. So it was one that I kind of came to on my own, and it came out. I was right at that age when Scream came out. So right when I was getting into Halloween, Scream, the slasher, late 90s boom, resurgence was happening. So it was just such an exciting time. Halloween H2O was in that. Jamie Lee Curtis, I think, is an amazing person. I think I've watched a lot of behind the scenes stuff with her. I know that, she's not a big fan, particularly of horror movies, but she always tries to show up for events and to honor the fans. And Daniel Harris, I do think is a fan of horror movies and also shows up for the fans. But they both approach it in two very different ways. And I would say I always was excited for Danielle Harris to get to meet Jamie Lee Curtis because Danielle Harris has mentioned it prior to this incident on several interviews and behind the scenes footage that like she's always wanted to meet Jamie Lee Curtis, which I can understand now. I came into the Halloween series because of Jamie Lee Curtis. I was a huge fan. I grew up with my girl, but True Lies I just thought was the most amazing movie at the time. And I thought that Jamie Lee Curtis as Helen Tasker, winning the Golden Globe performance was just fantastic. The scene with the helicopter, which Jamie Lee Curtis filmed on her 35th birthday, is one of the best moments in cinema to me. So when the opportunity to get to watch Halloween came up and I was like, oh, well, Jamie Lee Curtis is in it, then I definitely have to watch it. So if it wasn't for Jamie Lee Curtis, I don't know if I would be such a Halloween fan, or even such a horror movie fan because, like I said, I grew up with two older brothers, so horror was always around. It wasn't really my thing. I loved it, but it wasn't my thing until I saw Halloween, until I saw Jamie Lee Curtis in it, especially seeing her come back for Halloween 2, which it's hard for me to always say what my favorites of the series are. I would say, though, Halloween 2, 1981, Halloween 4, H2O, and Rob Zombie's remake, which, I also understand if you now need to leave because I am a fan of Rob Zombie's remake and I'm a fan of Halloween 2, his remake. So, but I've written actual articles for Wicked Horror about this and my thoughts, so please feel free to go search and read those if you want. What the heck is Justin Steele being a fan of Halloween 2 for? Actually, they're really amazing. So, anyway, my point being, I've watched a lot of behind the scenes footage or interviews, and Danielle Harris always said that she really wanted to meet Jamie Lee Curtis. And again, coming into it, my reason was for Jamie Lee Curtis. I can understand that. Also, but I thought, I always thought Danielle Harris, if Jamie Lee Curtis was the queen, Danielle Harris was the princess. I mean, up until the trilogy, she was in just as many Halloween movies as Jamie Lee Curtis was. Jamie Lee Curtis 1, 2, H2 and Resurrection, and up until the trilogy, Danielle Harris was 4, 5, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2007, and the part 2 to that. So I thought they both contributed equally to that. And as much as people want to always complain about sequels or have their comments on sequels, at the time, Halloween, if Halloween 2 had not happened as a sequel and Halloween's 4 and 5, especially at that time in the 80s, I don't know that people would still be, how much Halloween would still have the impact that it does today. And I'm saying that as a fan, a big fan of the original Halloween. But at that time, you had Nightmare on Elm Streets, one, two, three, four. You had Friday the 13th, one, two, three, four. Jason, Freddy Krueger were, dominating that scene. And if you didn't have Michael Myers come back for Halloween's 2, 4, 5, in which Danielle Harris was a part of 4 and 5, and such a memorable part of that and character, I don't know that Michael Myers would have stood up as tall as he does because he has his sequels. So my point being Danielle Harris's contributions, especially because she was a worthy adversary at such a young age to Michael Myers, or at least a survival final girl, trying to do what she could in it. And I think Danielle Harris is amazing in that. And then what she does coming back as Annie, along with Scout Taylor-Compton. Now, obviously, Jamie Lee Curtis will always be the iconic face of Laurie Strode, but I don't think that like Scout Taylor-Compton's contributions should be dismissed. I think she per perfectly encapsulated the girl next door qualities she needed to have for the first part of Rob Zombie's Halloween, but in part two, she really does take her to these really, I think, brilliant places, insightful. If you watch it, and again, I always say the things with Rob Zombie's Halloweens, you have to depends which versions you see. I think the theatrical cut of the first one is way better. I think the unrated version of Halloween 2 is way more interesting, although the Halloween 2 theatrical cut ending is way better. It makes more sense anyway. Uh, but in the Halloween 2, if you've seen the unrated version, what her and Danielle Harris do, because again, Danielle Harris has contributed to this series in significant ways. What they do is pretty magical and pretty wonderful. And I love that they've become like friends. They have their Talk Scary to Me podcast. They talk about an array of topics, but they've also talked about meeting Jamie Lee Curtis for the first time. And I do think that like Jamie Lee Curtis has made it very clear that she's not a big fan of horror movies themselves. She doesn't watch them. I mean, if you listen to her on the Halloween H2O commentary, which I highly recommend, she discusses it with Steve Miner and Sean Clark, who does like Hallowed Halloween or Hollow Horror's Hallowed Grounds. And she's very clear on there that like, the gory moments she cannot watch. And I think they don't take her as seriously as they should because she's made it clear she doesn't want to watch certain things. She will watch certain things. Whereas I think Danielle Harris and Scout Taylor-Compton have definitely embraced horror movies a bit more, not just the ones they're in, but the horror community. Jamie Lee Curtis has embraced the horror community as well, but in a way that like Danielle Harris and them get it from like fans of horror movies, whereas Jamie Lee Curtis isn't a fan of horror movies. So the whole incident happened, which I will play a little bit of here, where Danielle Harris and Scout Taylor-Compton discuss how it went when finally they got their opportunity to meet Jamie Lee Curtis. So to first just kind of set it up, essentially Halloween Ends 2022 premiere. Danielle Harris and Scout Taylor-Compton are there. There's an after party. They mention a Heather, who I believe is Heather Langenkamp, and Amanda Weiss from the A Nightmare on Elm Street movies are there as well. Danielle Harris is talking to Heather. I base this on the photo that you should now be seeing. Heather tells Danielle that Heather felt Heather was bothering Jamie Lee Curtis, so just be wary. Danielle Harris notes that, but her and Scout are excited. They want to take this opportunity to meet Jamie Lee Curtis. They've waited for years. And again, all the clips are below in the description for the full clips of the experience. And again, I highly recommend the Talk Scary podcast, Talk Scary to Me podcast. It's pretty great. So they get ready in line. They want to meet Jamie Lee Curtis together. They get there, they talk to a producer, but it doesn't seem like that'll work. They talk to a photographer. He kind of sets it up so that they can have this picture. But when Danielle gets up there, her experience with Jamie does not appear to be that great.
He took his picture. She was very welcoming and lovely with them, and took photos and left. And it's like, okay, now is our chance. But her back was to us, and I was like, oh shit, okay. So I went up to the photographer and I said, "Hey, would you get a picture of all of us girls, of all of us?" And that's when he was like, "Yeah, yeah, that would be epic." I was like, "Cool." So I think he had said something to her about like we're gonna do this as she had turned, and then I was like, "Okay, now's my chance." And I went up and she took out her hand and she said, she just said Jamie Lee Curtis, and she shook my hand and I said, "Hi, I'm Danielle Harris. So I played," and she was just like, but like, what's going on? Spit it out. And I said, "I played your daughter, Jamie, well, Laurie Strode's daughter, Jamie, in the older Halloween franchise." And she goes, I don't remember exactly how it came out, but it was, I've never seen those movies. I don't watch those movies. And I was just, there was a moment where I thought, I've heard this about her, but I'm waiting for her to say like, but I know, but honey, I know you. I haven't seen them, but I know you. Or, oh my God, I haven't seen them, but that's awesome. Or something, you know. And she just said, yeah, I don't watch those movies. I've never seen those movies. I don't watch them. I don't know who you are. And I, I was just like, "Oh, okay. And that was really like, I was just sort of like a deer in headlights. I just didn't know how to continue the conversation, because when you're sort of like cut off, how do you then say, well, can I continue to tell you how awesome I think you are? You know, it was just sort of like, I don't, okay, next, I'm sorry, I don't know you. You know, it was like,
Yeah, and I didn't know what
you weren't here. You couldn't hear
I
me.
didn't know. I was kind of waiting for my
You're
after
waiting your
you.
turn. Yeah.
And
I walked away and went over to the photographer dude. Like, I was just like, I don't know
well, and then that's when the
now what to
photographer
do.
got us all together. He
Yeah.
like immediately after your encounter, he got us all together and
Wasn't she like, well, what are we doing, guy?
yeah,
What's going on? What are we doing
yeah,
to him?
yeah, which I didn't know what had happened, so I was like, oh yeah, she's busy, she's got
Let's
she's
just
got
hurry
so
with the
much to do. I
pictures.
get it. She's like taking so much photos with everybody. I was like, okay, I'll just talk to her after this photo, like really fast,
Yeah.
just like tell her how much I love her and like thank you and like I played you and like it's such an honor to like be able to play Laurie Strode with you and whatever. So when we took that photo,
I was so far
you
away.
were so far away that the photographer was like, Danielle, scoot in.
Scoot in.
Because you were so far,
I
and
was
now
just
I
frozen.
understand.
I was
now I
literally,
understand why you were so far.
I was frozen. I didn't know what had happened. And I just like got stuck in time,
Hmm.
you know, like it just was not, I mean, I was just sad and I didn't know what had happened. And I just kept feeling like she's going to say, I'm just kidding at any point. And it didn't happen. So you could see like I'm just sort of standing, I was like just standing there. And we took the picture and then I just walked away fast. It
Yeah,
was like
you were gone.
embarrassed.
You were gone.
I was out.
You were gone.
Again, check the links below for the full clip, the full experience, but essentially from there, Scout Taylor-Compton confirms that she had a similar experience. She does not go into any specific details about it, but ultimately, Danielle Harris says she felt kind of dumb, like a deer in headlights, while Scout Taylor-Compton says that she genuinely was hurt. They both emphasize that they realize Jamie Lee Curtis could have been having a bad day. They realized that she was stressed, but their feelings are their feelings, and they both felt, and ultimately they both felt really hurt
Yeah,
by it.
maybe.
Everyone's allowed to have a bad
Everyone's
day.
allowed, yeah, to have a bad day, but we just can't lie about the experience. But
We were
fortunately,
bummed, guys.
yeah.
We tried so hard. We really wanted to tell her how much we loved her.
Well,
And we did.
We did.
We started to. We
Through-
could,
yeah,
kind of.
yeah.
We tried to.
Now, I will say I was pretty heartbroken when I heard that. As a fan, you love Jamie Lee Curtis. As a fan, you love Danielle Harris and Scout Taylor-Compton. So you want them to like all be friends, you know? You want them to all like, hey, I appreciate you and oh you. And I think I always, I think something in our minds as fans of Halloween, especially Halloween 4, when you see Danielle Harris like in the closet holding the picture of Jamie Lee Curtis or of Laurie Strode as her mother, you want like somehow to see them together, or you want Jamie Lee Curtis to see that and be like, oh, look at the performance that Danielle Harris gave. But Jamie Lee Curtis isn't going to watch Halloween 4. It's not her cup of tea. And Jamie Lee Curtis, Danielle Harris kind of mentioned that in the little clip, but Jamie Lee Curtis has always been very clear about this. I came across just before I started filming this little interview. Now it said it was a Halloween 2 interview, so I was like, oh, cool. I don't think I've ever seen her really talk about Halloween 2. There's a little bit on the like big collector's edition Blu-ray, but I was like, oh, maybe a little bit. So she doesn't really talk about Halloween 2 in this, but she does mention how she is not a big fan of horror movies.
Is it about time that Jamie Lee Curtis does something in a film in which something nice happens to her?
I would love to laugh.
Yeah.
Boy, I mean, I love laughing. I spend all my time laughing so that when I have to work, I can.
Yeah. Is that a danger, though, in terms of your career? I mean, we were the Queen of the Screams, the Virgin Queen of the Shivers, and all these other titles.
Well, I think it's, what's nice is that we all work hard to get to the top of something, and to be able to have worked in a sort of a type of film, even though I personally don't like them. I get terrified of them.
You don't go see it?
Oh, I'm terrified. I have my head down and my boyfriend's up the entire movie. I don't watch. I
Yeah.
peek up once in a while and look,
Yeah.
but I really don't like to look.
Yeah. So it's time to do something else.
I think so. I hope so.
So she's not a big fan of horror movies. And at this time, she's really lighthearted about it, but she's said it many times throughout the years. So it would make sense that she wouldn't really know who they are based on what she said, even if, she's heard of them before. And I remember when Halloween, the David Gordon Green Halloween came out, that there was a slight moment where they were talking to Danielle Harris. So I'm sure that like she heard Danielle Harris, but probably, you don't really, I'm the type of person it's hard for me to associate until I meet you. I hear about you, somebody I work with or something until I meet them. I don't really remember. I think, they wanted this moment, and that makes sense. Danielle Harris and Scout Taylor-Compton wanted this moment, but you also have Jamie Lee Curtis, who is somebody who does like to kind of get right to the point. She is an extroverted person. She's very much, I've watched a million interviews with her. She's good with the host, but she also kind of likes to have her moments, and also she kind of, I'm sure at the end, as I'm a little older now than I was, I'm not 20 anymore. I'm a little more tired, quicker after things, and it sounds like it was a really long day and event. But I'm a huge fan of Jamie Lee Curtis. But I do relate a little bit more to Danielle Harris and Scout Taylor-Compton, and maybe it is a generational thing. Jamie Lee Curtis was the one who started all this, whereas, since Danielle Harris was a young girl, she's always heard about Jamie Lee Curtis. Jamie Lee Curtis, she was in Halloween's 4 and 5, but like I can't probably her whole life she's heard about Jamie Lee Curtis, and Scout Taylor-Compton coming into the role of Laurie Strode always heard about Jamie Lee Curtis. So they wanted that moment. They wanted that experience. I'd be awestruck if I saw her and nervous and hope for it to go and become this magical story that you can tell. And when it doesn't, it's heartbreaking. Now, I will say with David Gordon Green's trilogy, though, and leading up to why I probably feel so strongly about this, I really do wish that Danielle Harris could have been a part of it. I thought Judy Greer was fantastic in it. But for me, the whole time I watched that trilogy, I just felt like this was our last chance to have another magical moment like I had when I saw Halloween H2O. I'll never be able to describe. I went and saw, David Gordon Green's Halloween in the theater, and it in no way captured the energy, the magic that was when Halloween H2O came out. Again, I was right at that age, but the theater was erupting and cheering, and it was like a party. It was just amazing. It was magic. And I thought that was like a once in a lifetime thing. You're not gonna have that again. And when I heard Jamie Lee Curtis was coming back, I was like, wow. And then I heard they were gonna have a daughter character. I'm like, oh, could this finally be the time that maybe Danielle Harris could be in a movie with Jamie Lee Curtis, and not only a movie, but a Halloween movie. So I always felt that was, again, the trilogy was meant to be one thing, so I get it. But like at the end of David Gordon Green's Halloween, when you sort of have this female empowerment generational female empowerment moment. I'm like, how special would that have been for fans of who have been fans of what Danielle Harris did at such a young age in Halloween's 4 and 5? What if she was the one who, the torch was kind of passed to Karen and then passed to Andy Matichek's character? This would have been so great to have had that in Danielle Harris, in my opinion, and would have made that close to what had happened when Halloween H2O came out. And it's hard to explain. I think people are fans of Halloween H2O, but unless you like really were there at that time, it's really hard to explain. That movie was a success. I thought that would be a special moment again. So hearing that like Danielle Harris was met Jamie Lee Curtis, so I then saw the picture that came up that where I would have been in the clip that you saw, the whole picture they're talking about. When I saw that, I was like, it happened. You met her. That's awesome. But I also saw Jamie Lee Curtis's face in it, and I'm like, she does not look particularly happy to be in this picture right now. And I put that to the side, like, hey, I'm seeing. I didn't want to see it. I wanted it to be the moment I wanted it to be. And so the thing I felt that was missing, and I thought there was a lot of great about the David Gordon Green trilogy, but I felt there was something missing the whole time. It was almost like, oh, here's the piece of the puzzle. At least it's something now, some recognition. Because I think the big difference too, and this is important, is Jamie Lee Curtis's experience with Halloween and how Halloween treated her is a bit different, I think, than Danielle Harris's. And I think, like, yes, Jamie Lee Curtis had to, she became the Scream Queen, even though she was not herself a fan of horror movies and wanted to do more what was, more A-listy stuff at the time, Trading Places, whatever that might be, to True Lies, etc. But she always embraced it and she was always gracious about it. But the Halloween series, I feel like they always were like pretty much willing to have Jamie Lee Curtis come back and tailor the movie to be Jamie Lee Curtis's vehicle. Whereas Danielle Harris, the whole situation with Halloween 6, which you can find on YouTube, Jamie's story. Long story short, they kind of gypped her. They did, not kind of, they gypped her. And it was it wasn't just the money, it was the disrespect, which, you can find tons of stuff out there about it, but it was horrible. And so, but when she did come back for Rob Zombie's Halloween's, and I feel like one thing that was nice was Rob Zombie, love him or hate him, he gave Danielle Harris a tribute. And if you watch the unrated version, it's sort of, he puts this, because it's not in the theatrical version where he puts this like small clip of her as a little girl in there holding this puppy, but it's right at that age of which she would have been at Halloween's 4 and 5. And at least he honored Danielle Harris because in Halloween 6, they did not. She came back for Rob Zombies, but then it seemed to happen again with the David Gordon Green trilogy, as in she wanted to be a part of it, and they kind of kept pushing her aside. So Jamie Lee Curtis has always had this amazing experience, or at least like, we love you, Jamie, from the Halloween fans as well as the Halloween like production. Dale Harris has always had this sort of high low, and it's not always, I think she's always honoring the Halloween series, but it's not always been kind to her. And so this would just be like the cherry on top of that. Like she finally gets to meet Jamie Lee Curtis, and it doesn't go well. Scout Taylor-Compton hasn't gone into the specifics of what she went through, but it sounded like it was similar. So, and I feel like she did a lot of great things with Laurie Strode. But so finally, I'm sorry, the long way around, but like I wanted to emphasize just how much I have such mad respect for Jamie Lee Curtis and for Danielle Harris and Scout Taylor-Compton, and my own personal feelings about like what the new trilogy did and how it left out Danielle Harris and how that would have really been the closest thing to having the H2O experience again. So to hear that then now this went so badly. Well, kind of cool fact is that I was watching on YouTube, and I'll put all the links for all of these will be below. But I was watching on YouTube this Scream Fest panel where Scout Taylor-Compton and Danielle Harris were on it. Because I was actually researching this again because there's YouTube videos out there about this whole feud or Jamie Lee Curtis shunned them, and so and again, my heart's been sort of melancholy. again, there's bigger things out there in the world. I get that, but like to me, this made my heart really heavy. And so I was looking up again. I think I looked up last year, nothing new. This year I looked up and was like hoping to find like Jamie Lee Curtis responds because again, Danielle Harris and Scout Taylor-Compton have their Talk Scary to Me podcast. So I'm like, maybe she's heard this, maybe it's been brought to her attention, maybe she's responded to it in some way that like would make this all better. Well, it seems like maybe she has a little bit.
We just met her at the last Halloween movie premiere. That was our first time, and we were very, very excited to meet her. It didn't go as we thought it was gonna go, but I'll still fucking watch all her Freaky Friday movies and everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but no, I had not met her.
Was there any disappointment in that? Because I hear some comments in the back. I happen to be a huge fan of Jamie Lee Curtis, but I was surprised, to hear you say that. This can be a simple yes or no answer for me, but I am a little surprised that, was it disappointing for you not to have that connection with her?
Yeah, I cried.
She actually cried.
I don't blame you.
But like everybody has a bad day or whatever.
She was
wasn't
exhausted too.
Yeah, it just wasn't the experience that we'd hoped for. But yeah, that's it.
Did you ever see the video of when Jerry Seinfeld meets Kesha?
No.
Oh fuck, I have seen that video.
I'm gonna have to look it up now.
It was yeah,
but who do
that's
you
funny.
sympathize with
Wow.
in that situation?
I've
honestly?
never seen it. Would it? Do I have to?
Doesn't go.
Oh my god, that is funny. That's literally was me. Oh my god, that's funny. Okay, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I'm glad I
I've
asked.
seen Kesha in that video.
But fuck, dude, I love her. I love her.
Yeah.
She literally is the fucking scream queen. Like
Yeah.
she fucking started this for all of us. Like she paved the way for women in this fucking genre. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'm glad I asked the question, and I am sorry for your experience.
It's
I am
okay.
glad I asked because I was very interested.
I do want to say something though. So her daughter heard our podcast, and we talked about our meeting with her and our disappointment that we were so excited and we were upset and feelings hurt, and we had this idea of what it would be like, and it wasn't that experience. And so her daughter had said, I heard this. So she actually Jamie contacted us on Instagram. And
She
sent
slid
us-
in them DMs.
She slid into our DMs.
Nice.
That makes it all worth it. Just that right there.
I was like, holy.
That was very
fucking
very
Jamie Lee
nice of her.
Curtis is fucking messaging me right now. And she just said, my daughter, told me this, and I apologize. I apologize for not knowing who you are. I had a lot going on. I had family and friends that I didn't even have time to talk to, and blah blah blah. And I was like, whatever. And then she asked, do I have kids? And I said, yes, I have 2 kids. And she wanted to know their names and where they lived. And it was like this whole thing. And she ended up sending me a big bag of all of her children's books that she wrote. And she autographed and signed them both, all to me. And actually, I just was reading one to my kid the other night, and I opened it up and realized that she had wrote everything on the inside. It was like, you are amazing. And then she would cross out you and wrote, Jagger and Carter is amazing. Like she took the time to personalize all of those to me to make up for it. And I thought that was really, really, really sweet of her. So
That's awesome.
she made it better. Everyone has a bad day.
Yes. Thank you so much.
So that makes me think that maybe there's some healing, maybe a little bit of peace, maybe a little bit of something. Because again, like both Danielle Harris and Scout Taylor-Compton have said, that everybody has a bad day, everybody has a moment, and she has always been like, I don't watch these horror movies, and I think that's one of the things that like stunned Danielle Harris. But I think she really wanted to meet Jamie Lee Curtis, and why wouldn't she? And I think Danielle Harris has earned the right to have like something go right for her in terms of all of this, to have like in terms of everything she's done for the Halloween series, because I think she's done a lot. And Jamie Lee Curtis, as well as as much as Jamie Lee Curtis, but Jamie Lee Curtis is also entitled to have a bad day, and I think that like that is very much the spirit of Jamie Lee Curtis. Now I watch also like Housewives of Beverly Hills, and Jamie Lee Curtis has been on there like 3 times, and how she was with Danielle Harris and Scout Taylor-Compton, I think is similar to how she kind of is in terms of she's always cordial, always nice. But if you notice, like Kyle Richards, when she's with Jamie Lee Curtis on the show, is always very like respectful, always like making sure whatever drama's going on with all the girls, if Jamie Lee Curtis has appeared for the episode, she's like making sure everything's perfect for Jamie Lee Curtis. And Jamie Lee Curtis has deserved that. Jamie Lee Curtis is amazing. She does amazing things for all these charities. So it makes sense to me that like she would send these books, that she would reach out in her own way about it. And I would love to still see them together. I'm still hoping for a return of Jamie Lloyd to the series. I don't think it'll ever happen and I say this now because I know it will never happen, but I would like to still keep some hope alive that somehow enough, not only that Jamie Lee Curtis and Danielle Harris do a movie together, but that somehow they do a Halloween movie together. And I know it's not going to happen. But I've been watching these movies for almost 20 years, so let me have some of my still hopes and dreams about it. But it did make my heart happy. And I'm glad it happened in October because I'm going through right now, I'm watching all my horror movies, Halloween, Scream, all of them. And last year, and I do this, I do it more than just October, but like in October specifically, I go through and watch these specific ones. And last year it did weigh on my heart a little bit watching how this all went. And so when I got to like Danielle Harris's stuff, I just felt so sad for the whole thing. So this year it does give me a little hope, a little bit that like the queen and the princess and the lady in waiting are all sort of working on it in their own ways. Again, I think Danielle Harris is, I would feel a certain way still after not only meeting Jamie Lee Curtis, but just the whole experience. It's so bittersweet, I feel like, for her, whereas Jamie Lee Curtis does tend to get more of the like sweet end of things. And so I hope that like this helps her heart heal a little bit. I hope that like her and Scout talked about it and Scout's heart is healing a little bit too. Anyway, that's my Halloween update. That it seems like maybe we're on the road to healing, and that's awesome. A little bit of peace. So the experience is their experience, and I certainly don't diminish it. These make us who we are, right? But from a fan perspective, it's nice to know that like they're on the road to making it right, whatever that means in the future. So, but what do you all think? Did you hear about this? Do you know about this? What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments below. Hope everybody has a happy Halloween, and I'll talk to you soon.
Daddy,